So I was contemplating on what to do a reading on. I haven't been doing too many readings this week. Just needed a little break. But while contemplating on what to do the reading on, I started thinking about, when we're going through life and we begin to realize that some of the, connections that we have aren't as genuine as we may have thought that they were. And I'm not just talking about relationships, I'm talking about, workplaces. And when we realize that we may have been seeing things in a way that isn't actually true. Like, people can act one way to your face and then behind the scenes act a completely different way. And that happens everywhere, right? It's like you're just trying to do your thing, and then, and this can happen for years and years and years, and you have no idea that behind the scenes people are actually viewing you a certain way, potentially mocking you. And then if you decide to set those boundaries, and if you decide to say, well, then I'm not going to look for external validation. If this is a pattern that I'm seeing in many different areas of my life, then I'm not going to exchange that energy, and I'm not going to look outside of myself to find my value, because I don't need to. And then in those situations, what's very common is for people to be like, well, how dare she or he set boundaries? How dare they don't want to be around us anymore? Oh, they're just stuck up now. Oh, they're too good for us. Or when in reality, they were always saying something negative. They weren't saying anything positive. They didn't have any part in your growth. You were actually at war with somebody's words and didn't even know it. But now that you know it, then they expect you to stand back in their circle? It doesn't make sense. And it's like, when you begin to see the truth, you can either be a victim of your circumstances, knowing behind the scenes that people are attacking your character, people aren't believing in your abilities, people aren't supporting you, even if they act like it to your face. And then you can just sit there and take it like it's normal. But then you're choosing that. You're choosing to be in an environment where you're never going to be able to grow. Because people's words and perspectives, unfortunately, can very easily impact others around you, especially if they're in leadership positions. And the sad thing is, many leaders that aren't fit for leadership, that don't actually deserve to be there, which is many leaders, if they're intimidated, or if they feel like you are a threat to their team or their job, why are they going to build you up if they're in their shadow? If they're in their fear and guilt and manipulation and, overpowerment of others. That's not a true leader. A true leader is going to build their team up, is going to want them to do better than them, is going to build them up and help mentor them into being the best self that they're meant to be. They're not going to look at another person as a threat, because they know inside that they are worthy and they have value. So if somebody knows truly and believes in themselves, they're not going to be threatened by somebody else who's developing into their power. And it goes in many different areas. You can look at that in religious groups. You can look at that in any type of organization or culture, family dynamic. If somebody's not coming from a healed place, they're going to look at others as a threat and want to squash rather than build. And so unfortunately, if we've gone through life loving on people, building people up, supporting them, if that's our natural rhythm, we're not going to even think about that type of reality as a thing. We're just going to be trying to do our best. So when people that are in that lighter energy and supportive energy, when they find out that many people in their circle are actually completely different than the way that they've seen them to be, and they realize that, wow, people actually don't support me, or there's many people around me that don't actually flow or vibe with what I'm trying to put out. It's insane how people become shocked, and the first thing they want to do is attack that person's character when all that person has done is help and support those individuals for many years sometimes. But they expect for that person just to be okay with the fact that they've realized that these individuals never had their back to begin with, and just be like, all right, let's go back to normal, guys. That is why people set boundaries. And sometimes people you don't have to have a confrontation with somebody to know their true intentions. You just don't. You see patterns. You can see. You can feel. You put two and two together, the things that people are saying, and you're like, oh, well, I never told you that, but you know that. Why? And then you figure out who this person was connected to, or you see their responses. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries when an individual can do their assessment of the people that are around them and realize that 90% of them don't support them. There's nothing wrong with people setting boundaries in that way. And if you think there's something wrong with that, if you think that if you are the individual that hasn't been supporting, that has been attacking verbally behind another individual's back, when you know that that person has always been there for you and supported you, if you think that that person doesn't have a right to set boundaries and to just not interact with you anymore, then you need to check yourself, because you're telling the universe that it's okay to be bullied, that it's okay for you to treat somebody like crap and then expect them to not show you the same thing. And the thing is, when people set boundaries, a lot of the times they're not even treating you like crap. They're just getting away from your crap. That's the ironic thing. But yet, somebody that can't handle that because they feel entitled to your energy, or they feel entitled to your space, or they feel entitled to what's going on in your life just so that they can go gossip about you. There's a complete imbalance there. And sorry, that's not okay. Because then that means that you're just expecting somebody to be your freaking piñata. Oh, I can beat the crap out of you with my slander and my words and my, oh, hi to your face. And then, oh, did you hear this? Did you hear that? Oh, she thinks she's too good for everybody now. Or he thinks that he's just off on his own. He's not even letting us access his information or what he's doing. No. You know why? Because we know what you're all about. That's why. And anybody that's been a victim of that has a right to set boundaries with people that don't have their back. They have a right to set their space the way that they want it to be. They have a right to create peace in their life, and you have no right to destroy that. And the funny thing is, the gossipers, the ones that are spreading lies and saying, oh, this person's too good for us because they're not associating anymore, blah, 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 are normally the reason why. Like, the irony, right? So when you hear people talking about others, don't take it for face value. You know, we need to really consider that sometimes the words that are coming out of people's mouths, they have motives. They're either motives or just an ego wound, because that person feels entitled to somebody else's energy or life. But obviously there's a reason why that person set the wall to begin with, because they figured out that everything that was going on behind here that seemed nice and supportive was actually venom, was actually information that that person was using as venom to destroy that person or the way that people see them. And it's absolutely crazy to me how many people, when their ego gets bruised, are spewing and vomiting the worst things about people, sometimes even lies, just because that person didn't treat them the way that everyone else does. Just because that person didn't turn a blind eye and say, I'll just get abused by this individual. No big deal. I'll just get over it so that I can be, slandered again and gossiped about again, and all my information can be shared to everybody else. No big deal. Because then that individual is actually not setting the boundary and saying, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And then what does that do? That just keeps their value lower, because they're accepting that type of treatment. Sorry, but when people are setting boundaries, it's because they know what they deserve. And why is that so bad? Why, when somebody says, I know how I should be treated. I know how I treat people. I know how I want to treat people. I know the type of environment and group setting that I want to create, which is supportive and building people up. And I don't waste time on talking and slandering somebody, because that's not a productive way to live. I have things to build, and I have things to do, and I have my own healing to work on, and I have my own growth that I need to focus on. That what is arrogant or too good for us about that? You know, like, it's flip-flopped. It's completely distorted because people may have words. People may have nice, shiny gossip, and not nice as in kind, nice as in juicy. They may have the juicy gossip, or, hey guys, why is this person being this way? Dragging people in with their own emotions, because that's what these manipulators do. They know how to play on people's emotions. So they're going to be like, say little things to bait people, to get people to be like, yeah, why isn't that person? Well, maybe it's because that person doesn't even know. Unfortunately, when people have gone through situations, especially big changes in their life, where they end up realizing that they were jaded in many areas, like relationships, jobs, lots of things. When something like that happens to people, they don't know who they can trust anymore. And that's a sad thing. And that's something that has to be healed, and it takes time. But unfortunately, when you have gone through something where you realize that many people in many different areas of your life never really had your back to begin with, and sometimes they were just waiting for you to fall so that they could gossip and slander and say, see, I knew this about this person, or whatever. Unfortunately, those people end up realizing that they need to set boundaries for their own survival. Like, you can only take on so much toxicity. And when you can take a step back and start assessing why this happened, or what happened there, and what the connection was there, and the patterns that shifted, or the way that people treated you before to your face, and then realizing that something else was said, it's not that hard to figure out that these individuals are not for your greater good. They're not for your growth. And so when people are doing their healing, when people have gone through very traumatic things in their life that have shifted the energy and the things, that the trajectory of where their life is going, and they're having to build themselves up again, they absolutely owe nothing to anybody. Anybody. They owe themselves the healing. They owe themselves getting rooted again. And as they're doing that, they're seeing. So no, when people want to step away, not even want, when people need to step away and set boundaries, don't take it as an insult. And if you do, you really need to consider your own healing. Because many times when people step back, when people have learned that they need to step back and assess the people that are around them, because they have had so many individuals that are false around them, don't take it personal. Because it really, truly has nothing to do with you. And if you hear people slandering other individuals that have gone through major shifts and changes in their life and are trying to reroute themselves and figure themselves out, stand up for them. Because, these people that rally the troops, the pot stirrers. You know, these people that get their ego bruised and then they want other people to join in because their ego's bruised. It's not helping you out. That's why gossip and slander is truly a destructive thing. There's nothing that comes from it that is good. And many times it can pull you in, and it can, if you know, when people are playing on people's emotions and when they're trying to drag you in to their ego being bruised and wanting to basically ruin somebody else's image or character, of course they're going to want other people there to listen. And of course they're going to want people to, you know, express their own fears on somebody leaving or not having anything to do with them, or, you know, spread stories about why that is. Because it's juicy gossip and that person thrives on it. They're just bringing you into their own destructive tendencies. And they feel better about it because now you're in on it. Now they got to vomit out all the gossip and drag you into that gossip. And now they feel better and validated for their own lack of healing. Because anybody that's healed or is in the healing process and that has gone through things to where they're forced into self-reflection, they're going to look at somebody that's going through something and be like, I know what's happening there, and, you know, I'm sending good vibes your way. I know, you know, I don't know what you've gone through or what you're going through, but I can relate. And I just really, you know, you take your time to be in your space, set those boundaries. I've been there. That helps to, you know, it's like anybody that has actually gone through something difficult and has been forced into that self-reflective state and is going through that, you know, death of the old and building up the new, understands that it has nothing to do with them. You know, when somebody's doing their healing, it has nothing to do with anybody else. And sometimes, you know, it's unfortunate, and people have to set boundaries, and if they don't really know if they can trust you or not, there are going to be some people that are cut off, and it's not going to feel good, and people are going to be like, well, I don't know what I did. You may have done nothing, but that person is being cautious with their heart. That person is being cautious with their space and, you know, what's rightfully theirs. Because if people only knew the type of difficulty it is to realize how many to realize the truth, you know, when you go through that and you realize that you were jaded with relationships, that you were jaded or not appreciated in workplaces when you should have been because of certain things, or when you connect the dots, you know, we don't know how much that impacted somebody, because one person's trauma is not the same for someone else. You know, our trauma is different. Something that maybe could have been nothing to us, if another person went through it, it could have completely broken them. Because we're all different, and we all have different wounds, and we all have different strengths. And that's why we need to respect and appreciate the fact that just because we don't understand doesn't mean that gives us a right to create false narratives or to slander people or to gossip. Because the reality is we don't understand. And we're not entitled to understand. We're not entitled to people's lives. And maybe like the whole social media, life, I'm sure that has flip-flopped things. It makes people feel entitled to know things, and it makes people feel entitled to understand. The reality is people that are going through hard things are trying to heal most of the time. And when they're doing that, they're going to make choices in order to create a safe space for themselves because they don't feel safe. And when we slander them and when we then build narratives of why they're doing that, all that's doing is reinforcing this individual's reason to set boundaries. You see? All you're doing is just proving why this person needed to separate to begin with. But I just don't understand. You don't have to understand. You don't need to understand. And if that is insulting to you, go to therapy. Because it doesn't involve you most of the time. And if it does involve you, it's because that person knows that you're not a safe place for them. That person has been confirmed, or that person has been validated enough to know, and you're continuing to show them. So when people set boundaries, if we're coming at it from a healed space, we're gonna not take that personally, or it's not gonna bruise our ego. Okay, like we're gonna say, do your thing. I support you. I'm here for you. If you need me, give me a call. If you want to go get coffee, let's go. But don't be insulted when they're trying to do their assessment of who in their life they can trust and who they can't trust. And we've all been on either side of it, and we have to just look at it, respect it. And if you are on the other side of it and it hurts and it's a wound, it's okay too. We need to accept that if we were in that person's position, we may need to do the same thing. And I think we all just need to look at everybody else in our life and realize that everybody's going through stuff that we don't understand, and we may never understand. But the one thing that I think everybody can agree with is it's nice when you have people that give you grace, and that if you are on the other side of it and they are setting boundaries, it's nice to be able to say, for that person to know that you are giving them grace and that you're saying, I'm going to be here if you need me. And I understand that you need to take this space and that you've been through some stuff and that you're doing your healing or whatever, but just know I'm sending you support and I love you. I think everybody could use that. And for the people that do get their ego bruised, you need to check yourself. Because there's a reason why people set boundaries. And if we can all just try and be a safe place for people, that means don't gossip about them. Don't share their pains and their the things that they've gone through with individuals just because you feel like you're coming at it from, I'm just concerned about them. That is the biggest crock of shit. If you're concerned about somebody, you wouldn't be saying that to begin with. You would keep that to yourself. And if you were concerned about somebody, you would go to them and tell them that. You wouldn't, that is like the easiest, most manipulative way to start slander or gossip, is to come at it as a concerned support system. Okay, we need to see through that bullshit. If you're truly concerned about somebody, you're not going to go to a group of individuals and in a manipulative way destroy their character. Well, I'm concerned about them because they've been doing this, or I just think that they really need help, or it's the typical churchy way to gossip. Anybody that's been raised in a church organization knows that is like the typical way to gossip, is to come at it like you're just a concerned person and you're concerned about that individual. That's just a way to, oh, well, why? No way, you're concerned. I need to be concerned now. So I just wanted to get it out there. If any individuals are out there that are doing their assessments and that are setting boundaries, do not feed these individuals that want to talk about you with anything more. And if people don't like that, then they were never meant to stay in your life to begin with. And it doesn't mean you have to cut them off forever, but if they're not going to change and they're just taking your information and spreading it around like everyone's entitled to your life story, then that is not a safe place, right? So I just want to get on here and remind anybody that's going through that it's okay to set your boundaries, and you are going to have pushback, and people aren't going to like your boundaries, and people are going to talk about you. But guess what you get out of that? Then you get to see and be validated of the reason why you set your boundary to begin with. And that isn't great. It's not a great feeling to come to that conclusion, but at least you are being gifted the opportunity to see who is going to have your back and who isn't. And people can say, oh, they've changed, or they're not the same as they used to be. Well, thank God, because when I was that way, when you were that way, what was happening behind your back that you didn't even know? So now you get to take your power back, and you get to be in your own space, in your own safe place, and your information and your personal experiences aren't getting siphoned out to everybody and their fucking mom, right? Now you get to be rooted in your power, and you get to say, whatever I build from here, wherever I grow, whatever direction I grow from here, whatever fruits are made from my growth, I know is going to go to people that are going to return that to me. It's not going to be siphoned, and it's not going to be wasted on individuals that never had your back to begin with. It's actually going to be cultivated, and it's going to be shared in a space that is safe, that is full of growth, that is full of opportunities, and it's not going to be manipulated and distorted by these individuals that were never meant for you on this new path. So, just a reminder, and obviously stuff going on in my own life, and so I'm just sharing that energy and intention with everybody else that may be going through the same thing when it comes to setting boundaries. And just remember, in that process that can be painful when you are realizing who has your back and who doesn't, just remember that it's all for your benefit anyways, because you don't want somebody in your corner that's not actually going to have your back and is going to be holding a knife behind them to stab you in the back. You don't want those people. And so this is the natural process of realizing and being able to see who is going to be in your space, who is going to help you grow, who is going to be that true tribe. You're growing your tribe. So that's it. And I'm going to do a reading now, and I will cut off this video and start a new one.